In this tutorial, we're going to look at making a graph with the graph tool. Now, if you can't see all these advanced features, you can go up to Window and Toolbars and click on your advanced toolbar. Normally, you might see the basic toolbar, which only has a few tools, very foundational tools, but nonetheless, if you want to get to more advanced features, go to Toolbars under Window and click on Advanced. And then we're going to get all our advanced icons and tools there. The one we're going to look at today is the graph tool, which starts off on the column graph tool. So I'm going to start a new document, Command N or File New, and 8.5 by 11 just to get an artboard going. So there I am. What I want to do is I just want to click on my column graph. And now if I right click on it, I can see the subset of tools here, the column graph, stack graph, bar, all the way down to radar graph. And there's quite a few different graphs that I could do. If I click on this little arrow to the right of it, which you can on some subsets as well, and what it'll do is it'll open all of them for you so you can see what's available to you. Now I'm going to start with this, but we're going to eventually get to the pie chart. But what I want to do first, I'm just going to click and drag. And as I click and drag, size it up any way you want with the column graph tool. Any graph tool. If you have a specific size, you could put it out, but for the most part, I'm just going to drag this, and this is what I get. I get my vector shapes here with a column, but I also get a spreadsheet that opens up, this little tablature, which I'm able to input information. If I want, I could put in, so let's put cookies, and I'll put in chocolate chip, and if I could spell that correctly, and I'll put in a few different ones like that. And as I click on a cell, now the information I put in here, I can place in, and that's good. So let's just say that, and I have 2 of these and 5 of those, and kind of just quickly put some information together. Any cell I click on, I can now put the information, just clicking it in here. Now there's a few other icons I have here. I could import data, which I'm going to do shortly. I could transpose the columns, changing a column to a row or row to a column. I could play around with the cell style, make them a little bit wider or add decimals. I can revert information, just undo, or I could apply the information, which is what I'm going to do right now. So I'm going to apply the information I just placed in here, and this is what I get. I get my chocolate chip, my peanut, and I get a little legend here, but it's not really helping me too much because there's not a lot of information in here. If I transpose the columns and I click on those, and now you see that my row became a column, my column became row, and let's see what this looks like here. If I apply that, now it looks a little bit differently. So black means chocolate chip, and peanut butter means this one here. So what I want to do now is I want to actually import some data. I'm going to import one that I've made. So what I've made one already here in Excel, I made a cookies one and just added a few extra ones and some numbers beside them. What I also did was, in order to make this work properly, I had to save it properly. I got a file, save as, and you need to make a .txt tab delimited text, and that will make sure that it works properly formatted for Illustrator to understand it. So I'm just going to click on that again, and I'm going to find that cookie txt file, open it, and now all that information goes in there. Now I've just got to get rid of this information. Just click on it and press delete, and now all that information is there from my Excel file. So I'm just going to apply it. And now I have even more information. Now, once again, a little bit messy there, but we can always go back because these are vectors. We can click on those. What I want to do, I'm going to transpose it here, and I'm going to apply it again. And now I have my legend in that way that works out. Now, the great thing about this, I can close this, and I can always bring the data back anytime I want. However, when I click on the information, see how it's going off the artboard, I want to shrink it down, I want to scale it down. But the issue is that normally when I click on something with a black arrow, it will show me a bounding box. It does not show me a bounding box. So the only way for me to work with this is to transform it. So I can right click, transform, and scale it. I can click on my transform panel and scale it, or I could click on my scale tool and just scale it down. Hold down shift, and now everything's inside there and I can move it around. All right, so now I have all that information. Another great little tool here is, like, say I want to color just the chocolate chip or just the Oreo and give it some proper color. I can go to a swatch panel, and a great little tool here is if I click on here with my white arrow, I'll click on sugar cookie. And what I could do now, if I hold on option and click again, it's actually going to get me selected to the other part that is connected to that color, the sugar cookie, and I can select it, and I can click on a color, and now that's there. I click on white chocolate macadamia, hold on option, click on it again, and it selects the other one that is connected to it. And I can give that a color, hold on Oreo, hold on option, and it selects the next one, and so on and so on. Now, obviously, I could also do this and hold down Shift, and it does the same way. But if there's a lot going on, and I'm not too sure about which is which, I can always hold down Option, and it does it for me. Let me do it one more time. Click on there, hold on Option, click again, and now it's going to select that other one for me. And there it is. All right, so now I have this colorful graph and everything's looking good. Now, what if I want to go back and edit it again? Very easily. Click on the graph with my black arrow tool, right click and click on data. And I can change up the data to anything I want. I want to add more oatmeal, just 3, apply it, and now I have more oatmeal. I can change it anytime I want, and I can close it anytime I want, which is great. The other thing I could do is right click on it again and press type. And with the type, it shows me the different types of graphs that I can choose, which are all up here. The column graph and the bar graphs, and obviously our pie chart. Now with the pie chart, there's a lot of options we could play around with too. Not a lot, but a few. You can add a drop shadow, which I don't recommend because you have more control if you do it yourself later on. First row in front, first column in front, add legend across. There's a few different options, but I'm just going to say okay. Now we have another option here. If I right click on this, go back to data, and what I can do is transpose it again. Let's just see what another pie chart kind of looks like, right? It gives you more or less a couple different options when you transpose. Okay, there's another way to look at a pie chart, which obviously for this situation doesn't work out too well. So I'm just going to transpose it back, apply, and now I have my chart again, which is great. I can close this and I'm good to go. Playing around with that, which is great. Now I'm just going to duplicate that just to show you something else. This is an editable graph which I could go back and change anytime I want. I could play around with a separate type. If I right click and say no, I want to change up my typeface, I could change it to anything that I feel would be better for this, and I could change it up there that way. Make it a little bit bigger, whatever I want to do. Oh, I missed Oreo, but that's okay. If I were to ungroup this, so if I right click, actually click on that and go to Object Ungroup, what that does, it actually takes it away. Illustrator's about to say, you're no longer going to have it connected to the data. I'll say yes. And now they're just normal vectors. I can click on them, and obviously with the black arrow tool, I'm going to get my bounding box, and I can do anything I want with them, but I cannot go back and edit them. If I right click, it does not show me that I can go back and edit. If I right click there, yes, I can go because this one has not been ungrouped. Another interesting thing that I can do, selecting all this, I can go up to Effect and add some cool effects to my graph. Extrude and bevel. And now what I can do, I can select some presets if I wanted to. There's a bunch of different presets here, and just go to preview just to make sure that you can see them applied. That's the back, the bottom. If there's a few different ways you could do this, but obviously to look at 3D, we kind of want to play around with something a little more interesting like this. We could also move it around manually, or we could use these input boxes and put in something very specific. Or we could also use perspective if you wanted to do perspective as well. Extrude and bevel, so we could say how much bevel we want, how deep we want it to be, or we could say how small we want it to be. If you go too much or your graphics are too complex, that's going to be a problem, as in it's going to take longer to render and a little trickier to play with. But either way, we could play around with the cap, get rid of the cap, the front vectors, or we could obviously just bring them back. We could play around with the different bevels if we wanted to play around with those too. And then if I were to click on more options, I get a lot of lighting changes that I could, light intensity, ambient light, highlight size, quite a few different, and the steps. If I wanted to play around with the different steps, let me make this a little bit bigger. And let me change the color, shading color. And I want to go to custom and just play around with a different color. Any color I want, the color picker shows up, and I can do that. I'll say okay. Now the steps, what it asks are all the different steps it takes to create that color. And if I make many steps, it's going to be a really, really nice blend. If I take away steps away, it's going to make it, there's going to be more banding between each individual step, which is fine. But for now, I'm just going to bring it up, which is just to let you know what you can do with that. And if I'm happy with that, I'm just going to say okay, and it's good. Now, once again, because it's still connected to the data chart, I can right click, click on data, and I can change it again. Say, no, I have more cookies, or I have fewer cookies, whatever you want it to do. And now if I apply it, everything changes again because it's still editable, even though it has an effect on it. Any effect, and it will still be editable, which is great. And with that, once again, I can transform it to change it. I could select these individual ones if I wanted. Another interesting thing you could do, I'm just going to do it down here, is you could actually click and drag. Without anything selected, I could click and drag a color on to a shape, and it will automatically apply it as well. So it just got that green, but once again, it's not connected in that way, so these two will not select at the same time. But you can also, just like I said, click and drag a color onto a non-selected area, and it will change to that color. This one's a little tricky because the actual box is right there. So if I select it, put it on there, then that one will change. Either way, this is just a quick showing of how the graph can help you play around with infographics, but how it could take data and create a vector for you. And then obviously after that, how you can still play around with it.